You did everything right. You got the degree. You did the internship, the unpaid one probably. You showed up, you did the work. And the thing that was supposed to be waiting on the other side of all that, the job, the stability, the you'll be set, it's just not there. Not the way they promised it would be. And honestly, here's the part that gets me. Somewhere in all of this, a lot of you have started to quietly wonder if it's you, like you messed up somewhere, like everyone else got a memo you didn't. So I want to talk about that. Not to pile on about how the system's broken. You already know that. You live it. You don't need me for that. I want to talk about the part nobody actually walks you through. What do you build now, when the bottom rung of the ladder just got taken away? So let me just sit here with you for a second, because I think this part matters more than any advice I could give you. If you're watching this from your old bedroom, you pay for your own groceries, you chip in for the bills, but you're technically still in the room you grew up in. There's this quiet hum of feeling behind, right? You open your phone and everyone's got the apartment, the title, the holiday, and you lie there at night doing this math about what's wrong with you. I want to say one thing to you, and I need you to actually hear it, not just nod. It's not you. And I don't mean that as a nice thing to say. I mean it almost technically. You're not lazy. You didn't pick the wrong degree. The path you were handed genuinely worked for a really long time. And then, pretty recently, it quietly stopped working, and nobody bothered to update the instructions. And here's where it gets kind of interesting. In a dark way, the version you've been told is, the robots are coming for your job. That's not quite what's happening. It's more specific than that. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Okay, for the longest time, the way you got anywhere in a career, it looked like a ladder, but it worked more like an escalator. You started at the bottom, and the bottom was boring. The grunt work nobody senior wanted to touch. It felt like busy work, but it wasn't. That boring bottom step was quietly carrying you up, because while you were doing it, you were soaking up how the whole thing actually works. You were collecting judgment, and a few years in, you'd look up and realize you weren't the kid doing the grunt work anymore. You were the one who knew things. You'd graduated. That's the escalator. Do the boring bottom for a while, and it lifts you up to the part where you're actually worth something. Here's what AI did. It didn't take the whole escalator. It took the bottom step. All that grunt work is exactly what a machine can now do in about 4 seconds. So companies looked at it and went, why are we paying a junior to do the thing the software does for free? And they just stopped hiring the junior. And this isn't me guessing. Stanford put real numbers on it last year. For young workers, 22 to 25, in the jobs most exposed to AI, employment dropped about 16% compared to everyone else. Meanwhile, people over 30, in the exact same jobs, kept growing. Same work. The only thing that decided who got cut was whether you were at the entry level. So sit with what that means. The problem was never that you can't do the work. It's that the first step, the one that used to carry you up to the work that matters, someone quietly pulled it out. The escalator's still running. The bottom of it is just gone. And you're standing there, looking up at a step you can't reach, while people who got on before you tell you should have climbed faster. And look, that's a genuinely worse problem than a robot took my job. But here's the strange part, the part I want you to stay for. Once that bottom step is gone, you don't have to climb the slow, safe way everyone before you climbed. You can't, actually. And weirdly, that hands you a choice they never got. You don't have to wait on the escalator at all. So here's the reframe, and I want you to feel the size of it. The escalator was never the point. It was just the machine that carried you toward the stuff that actually makes you free. Knowing things, owning things, and having enough room to choose. That's all it was ever for. So if the machine's broken, you don't sit at the bottom waiting for someone to fix it. You go build those 3 things yourself, directly, out of order, without asking permission. I'll be straight with you about all 3. But let's start with the first, because nobody can stop you from doing it. It costs you nothing, and everybody skips it because it sounds boring. You buy yourself room. Here's what nobody tells you about being broke. And I mean this from experience, not a textbook. When you've got no buffer, no room, you can't say no to anything. You can't leave the job. You can't wait for the better thing. You take the first offer because you have to. Being broke doesn't just mean no money. It means no choices. Every door's locked from the inside. And the money's the key. So the first thing you build isn't an investment. It's not a side hustle. It's room. a gap between what comes in and what goes out, even a small one, because that gap is the first choice that's actually yours. And okay, I'll tell you a couple of slightly embarrassing things about how I live. I eat basically the same thing every day, same breakfast, same lunch, on rotation. And almost everything I own, I bought secondhand. Op shops, the lot. For years, I was a little self-conscious about it, like it meant I was depriving myself, or I was just cheap. But here's what I worked out. I wasn't depriving myself of anything. I was just deciding where my money got to go. I made the everyday stuff boring on purpose, so I could pour it all into the one thing that actually meant something to me. And for me, that's Vietnam or Japan. I save up all year, and I go somewhere my money suddenly stretches, where I can walk in anywhere, order whatever I want, not check a single price tag, and just feel abundant, rich even. And that's the part I really want you to hear, because it took me years to see it. I'm not buying the flights or the food or the hotel. What I'm actually buying is the feeling of being rich. And it turns out that feeling is shockingly cheap if you're willing to be a bit boring at home and then go buy it somewhere your dollar stretches 3 times as far. That's not deprivation. That's the opposite of it. That was me in my 20s on a wage that was nothing special, quietly building the gap. And that gap is the only reason I ever got to make a single brave decision later on. So if you take one thing from this whole video, let it be this. And you can do it tonight. Don't budget. I'm not handing you a spreadsheet. Just find your number, the smallest amount your life actually costs to run for 1 month, the real floor. Because the day you know that number and you start building even a little room above it, that's the day you stop being someone things just happen to. That's the first thing. Room, the freedom to say no. The second thing is what you do with that room. And this is where almost everyone your age has been told a flat-out lie. So now you've got a little room. What do you do with it? Here's the lie I promised you. The lie is that owning things, investing, building any kind of wealth is for people who are already rich, that you need money to make money. So on a normal wage, why even bother? I need to tell you how backwards that is. Owning things isn't the reward you get for being rich. It's the thing that slowly makes you free, whether you're rich or not. It's not the prize at the end, it's the path. Because here's the quiet truth of the last few decades. The people who only ever sold their time, their hours, their wage, mostly stayed roughly where they started. And the people who owned even a small slice of something that grows drifted onto a different track. Not because they earned more, because they owned. And I'll be honest about where I actually am, because you can smell it when someone's selling you a fantasy. I'm not a millionaire on a yacht, but over years, quietly, kind of boringly, on an income that was nothing special, I built up enough that I don't have to worry about work for a long time. And I'm only at the start of that stretch. It wasn't a big salary, and it wasn't luck. It was that boring little gap, turned over and over into things I owned instead of things I spent. Now, I have to stop and be straight with you, because I hate when people skip this part. If your money already vanishes on rent and food before the month's even over, then just invest is a slap in the face. You're not at the owning step yet. You're at the build the first gap step. And that's not you failing. That's just the actual order of things. Room first, owning comes after. Nobody gets to skip you ahead, and nobody should make you feel behind for being exactly where you are. And here's the strange thing about getting even a little of that freedom. You'd think the dream is to finally do nothing, to stop. I tried. I genuinely couldn't. My brain doesn't come with an off switch. So instead of fighting that, I started pointing it at building something of my own. Something that, if it works, pays me whether or not I ever clock into a job again. And that might be the most important thing on this whole list, especially now. So here's the third thing, and it's the one that actually answers the AI question everyone's scared of. Remember the escalator? The whole point of that bottom step was that it taught you judgment. It turned you into someone who knows things, someone worth paying. So if they've taken the bottom step away, you go get that judgment another way. You build it on purpose, instead of waiting for a job to hand it to you. And the fastest way I know to build judgment is to make something of your own. Almost anything. A small project, a little business, a channel, a side thing. Something where you're not just doing tasks somebody hands you, but deciding what matters, making the calls, seeing what works and what flops. That's judgment. You're manufacturing the exact thing the escalator used to give you, except now it belongs to you. And here's where AI flips from the villain of this story into the most powerful tool you've ever been handed. Everyone's asking, will AI replace me? Wrong question. The people who'll be fine aren't the ones competing with AI. They're the ones directing it. The gap between typing a task into a machine and knowing whether what comes back is any good. That gap is judgment. And it's about to be one of the most valuable things a person can own. I'll tell you what this looks like for me. Honestly, I've got the runway. I could sit still. I told you, I can't. So I'm building this channel. The thing you are literally watching right now is the thing I'm talking about. In my head, it's not a hobby. It's an asset, something I own that I'm sharpening my judgment on that might one day pay me whether I show up or not. I'm doing the exact thing I'm asking you to consider. And before you decide this only counts if you're online, it doesn't. The same wave of AI hollowing out entry-level desk jobs is quietly making people who work with their hands and their judgment worth more, not less. Electricians, the trades. There's a real shortage coming. Something like 2 million trade jobs could go unfilled by the end of the decade. And on the data center builds powering all of this AI, electricians are pulling six figures. Because a model can't rewire a house. Judgment plus hands a machine can't reach. But same rule as before, because I won't lie to make this sound easy. Don't quit your job tomorrow to become a creator. Please. Most people who try to live off their own thing earn almost nothing. And anyone who says otherwise is selling you a course. You build it on the side, quietly, on top of the room you already made, next to the income, never instead of it. So that's the whole thing. Room, owning, and building something that's yours. Not because the old deal was fair, it wasn't, and it's gone. But because once you've got those three, you don't actually need it anymore. I want to leave you with the thing I wish someone had said to me when I was younger and felt behind and ashamed and stuck. It was never you. The path genuinely broke. That part is real, and I won't pretend it isn't. But the flip side of the path breaking is that you don't have to walk it anymore. You don't have to stand at the bottom of an escalator that's missing its first step, hoping someone lets you on. You can step off the whole thing and start building. Tonight, with the one move that costs nothing. Find your number, build a little room, and keep going. You're not behind. You're just early, in a game most people haven't realized has already changed. So let me leave you with the question I actually want you to sit with. Maybe even write it down somewhere. If nobody is ever going to hand you the old deal back, what would you build? If you finally stopped waiting for permission that was never coming? Take your time with that one. It's a good question. Fare thee well.